I just seen another manufacturer close down with no warning. Right? And there's veterans that work there who now come a couple of months, they have nothing, right? And so too, it's just like, what if I tap you into an industry that is growing? Right. $4.1 billion, right? So I think too, that's when I'm just like, Georgia's becoming bigger than Hollywood, LA for this industry, which is why I'm just like, why are we not talking veg? Right? There are some companies inside this film stuff that have a monopoly because we're also talking about people that they need to transport. So if you want to drive trucks, how do you get into transporting the actual equipment? And you can still drive trucks, but you can do it for the film industry. We're not even talking about that.
I think that's what a lot of people don't think about. You think about film, but there's suppliers, there's transportation, the logistics,
lumber, everything.
Right? All of that stuff that goes on because at every movie set, there's food.
There's food.
Between takes, go get your food. There's got to be cooks.
Yes.
Right? There's got to be people to prepare it.
How do you get on the list, right? If you got your own business. Too, that's why the bank piece for us bringing them in here, so us to teach you about business credit, about making sure that your personal credit is good, about budgeting, giving you these fundamentals so that way if you want to become an entrepreneur, and then now it's like, hey, you know what? I want to start my own catering company. Right. And then we say, well, this is how you get on these radars of these people because they're going to have to feed the people there, right? And so just different things when it's like, I don't necessarily need you in front of the camera. So many things behind the camera that make this whole thing work, and then we can slice it up and chop it up. And so our vets, sometimes they need the entrepreneurship too because people don't know how to help them always supervise them. Right. And then two, they've already done that for so many years. Maybe they want to work for themselves now. Maybe they want to leave something for their families, right? And they've already done what they had to do for our country. Now let's help them do what they want to do. And how do we make that lucrative, right? And so that's why I think us adding that into it and our lobbyists understanding, I'm going to shout him out, Matt Campbell, who is an amazing person who gets it, what we need to do right here in coastal Georgia side of the house, where they have it in Atlanta. But what can we do? We have the bases here. Right? We have most of the vets are here. So how do we make sure that they know what we're doing? And that's partnership with all these different organizations and things of that nature.
Yeah, because I think sometimes organizations, not only this is the way we've always done it, we're going to continue to do it this way, but they're asking what's in it for me. And they're not really focused on the veteran and the people to say, what's in it for them? How do we serve them? What do they need? And I think the Prosper program, to be able to have somebody go there for a day and to actually see everything that's going on, network, talk with the people, just making those connections. Right? Because like they say, just getting your foot in the door. You might start to talk to somebody and that veteran says something, I did this before, and they're like, what? We're looking for somebody that has that skill or has a passion for that.
And then or if not, it's like, hey, listen, as a kid, I liked Tonka trucks. I like to play in the mud. Maybe now I teach you how to do asphalt. Right? Maybe there's a pathway for that. You know, and it's just like, I didn't know I could do that. I want to work on these big machines that can tear this road up and repave it. And now I'm giving back to the infrastructure of our community, but I didn't know how to do that if I didn't work at the top company here. I didn't even know you guys existed. So that's where I go, right? And so, to me, most people know combat because I'm the face, me and Dreamer now, right? James helps me undergird all that behind the scenes from a veteran perspective of it. So that way I'm going to the right places because I'm also getting insight from him and our other veterans that sit on our board too. What should we do? And I'll bring them different opportunities we have. Like, you think we should navigate here? And they're like, oh, this is amazing. Or they bring it to me and say, hey, listen, where I might have the time because they're working now, right? And this new business is going to afford us to be able to have more time because we can control the hours and things like that. So that way the networking is good, the schedule is good, and we just keep moving forward. 2024 is going to be great, but we've already did some amazing things in 23 that have blown our mind. Even helping a veteran nominate one and to get a free home, mortgage-free home this year.
That's awesome.
That is amazing. And I tell people all the time, you just have to be in place, in position. You don't have to have everything figured out because some of these businesses, they don't. They're changing things because guess what? Everybody had to adjust during the pandemic. Right?
Right.
Some people didn't even recover back from the pandemic who thought that they had things okay and in place. They didn't survive, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I always give myself permission to be able, as executive director, to be able to bring new things to that board and say, hey, listen, doesn't matter that we didn't do this yesterday. Let's try it because you never know what's around the corner. We came into a building in the middle of a pandemic. We ran into it. We didn't run away from it.
Right.
And then we grew in a pandemic versus folding.
And that's what sometimes happens is going through a problem.
Yes.
Right. Having some roadblocks or a bumpy road helps you grow. Going through difficulties helps you grow more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then going back to the prosper, this, I don't know if I've never really thought about this before, but I think for maybe a good majority of military members, when they join the military, they may not be running from problems, but they just don't know where they fit in the world. Yeah. And they're like, I'm going to go to the military to get schooling, to get some discipline and direction. And then when they get out, it's kind of full circle. They may be going back to the beginning, like you said, hey, maybe as a kid, you like to play with Tonka trucks or this or that. You know what? And maybe that's what I wanted to do, but I kind of joined the military, and they said, "This is what you're going to do."
Yeah, by those
and now I'm
limited
out,
knowledge. Yeah, the
so
test
I'm back
boards.
Full circle with more life skills.
Yes.
Right now, maybe I get a chance to fulfill that passion or what I really wanted to do in life. And going through Prosper gives you that opportunity to go through multiple industries and to say, you know what? I think that's where I want to be.
That's where I want to be. And I tell people all the time is like, when we do the job fairs, I'm going to go back to that, and then you place people and then they quit within 3 months. Look at all the wasted man hours.
Right.
The dollars that was associated with onboarding them that could have been avoided if you had just partnered well with an organization that's doing something like that and let them have that behind the scenes look to see if they would even fit there in the first place by then the shadowing process. When I was in high school, I went through a job shadowing process, and I'm just appalled how we forgot about that with our vets as they're getting out. So this is nothing but job shadowing behind the scenes. So if you tell me as a high school person, you saw the investment worth it for me to come to your business and do a job shadowing program, but then I go to the military, I get out, then I have to go through CHAP, and you're feeding me a bunch of paperwork or people talking at me and want me to absorb that versus me putting my hands to it, letting me touch it. That's just what boot camp was. You know what I mean? An AIT or whatever they're calling it now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to let them touch it. You have to let them see it. Let me get the experience in it. But we forgot that layer because I was telling someone a job fair, I'm just looking down the table. Who got the best swag, right?
Right.
Yeah. Who has the best swag? Who has the best gummy bears? And then two, like I'm giving you a resume and you're giving me piece back. But then these aren't even the people that I'm going to be working beside.
Right.
These are like HR reps.
And some of them don't have military background, so they can't relate to the military member.
Right? They know, like, I need to see that on there. Let me get you. So then that's why I'm like, also, maybe the language wasn't represented right at the job fair because you don't have the relatability there that knows how to serve with them. And then they get there and like, this is not what I signed up for. And then that's when they quit because you don't have the right person.
I've had recruiters call me for aviation work, and they said, do you have Black Hawk experience? And I had a little. And I said, well, I got a lot of Seahawk experience. And they said, we're looking for Black Hawk. They were looking for somebody to work on the electronics. And I was like, you do realize a Seahawk is fully equipped with all kinds of electronics, and a Black Hawk has minimal. It's basically comms and a couple other things. It's the same aircraft. It's just different systems. And if you can work on this system, you should be able to work on that one when you're talking about fixing wires and fixing a system. But they just weren't educated enough to understand what they were actually looking for.
Because they were fixated on that one term.
Right.
And didn't know, like, hey, listen, if I can get somebody that knows this, this, and this, that connects back to really what we are. And I've heard other employees like, I don't want to train them. Well, guess what? You're going to have to. You're going to have to. There's training. If we don't train, that's when the errors happen. That's when the mistakes happen. That's when the hazards happen, life-threatening things. So when I see people say they don't want to train from a bank to the industry, industrial industry, that's where accidents happen.
Yes.
And that's a bad way of management to say, I don't have time to train, because if we don't stay in a training posture, we're not growing.
Right. I've worked for some companies and told them that I understand we're not a training facility, but we need to train because your way of doing something, even if it's in the same industry, another company is doing it a little bit different, or they say, we want our standard operating procedures like this, and this company has it a little bit different.
Yeah.
They can't hit the ground running and come in there and know exactly how it goes.
Yeah.
If you did the same work in the military, things are completely different from branch to branch.
That's
we use different management systems when it comes to maintenance. Yes. So just the lingo and the terminology for them to get up to speed to understand that. How are they going to come in day one and understand exactly what they're supposed to do?
And then when you have that mindset that training is far in the back, that's when they're not there, because all they've known how to do is train to get better, train to get the mission, train to deploy, train to show up, train to make sure they're good leaders. And so you say, training is so far off, and they're like, this isn't for me.
Right. Yeah. In the military, that's all we do. Train before we train.
Yes.
Right? In the civilian world, training just kind of takes a back seat. Yes. But then we wonder, in a manufacturing world, why do we have so many defects? Why is this not being delivered on time?
Yeah.
Because we're not training our people.
Yeah.
Because they're not ready. They don't understand. It's not that they're not capable. You're not giving them the tools that they need to do their job.
Yeah, you want to turn a widget out. But then when I get the widget, like you said, it's defective. Right? Or two, maybe my finger got sliced. Or somebody lost a life, a limb in there. And that is why we have OSHA and things of that nature, to make sure that some of these places are compliant, but you don't see it in the smaller businesses. Right? Too. So I think that's something too that is missed when we're going after that vet, is an ongoing training. So I'm always in a training posture, a learning posture everywhere. And as I'm remaking myself over from leaving one system, going into a wholly new system, it is the training and the learning that I'm yearning for. That's how you get better.
Right. So. And I think it's part of how you're training somebody, because people have so many different styles of training, and people learn different ways.
Yes.
Just because you're training somebody this way and they're not getting it doesn't mean that they can't get it.
That's right.
Right. You have to look at it from another perspective. Or, like one of my kids may learn one way and the other one's not going to learn the same way.
That's right.
You got to figure out, how do I relate that to them in a real life situation that they understand, and then it clicks, that light bulb.
Yeah.
They're like, I get it. And once it clicks and they get it, now they're like, I don't know why I didn't know that before, but now I can't forget it. And I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I think for the most part, I think business, they're not averse to training. I think they're averse to the fact that they don't want to take the time to figure out how to train people. Because like I said, not everybody learns differently. So if I got to figure out how to train, I got to create different ways to actually get people invested and want to actually learn certain things. And that takes more effort than actually just putting training together.
Right.
Because that means you got to sit down and actually know your people. Most people don't have time. They don't have time to do that. That's a low priority for them. I don't want to care to get to know you. Well, I understand that if you get to know somebody and actually know them, understand like their background, their family, people are more apt to want to work for you and actually do things with you, and actually want to actually put more effort into it. Because you taking the time to actually sit down and actually want to know me, as opposed to just some like some half-hearted stuff. Because you do that, then all of a sudden people lose motivation. They're not gonna be invested. Okay, you don't care about me, I don't care about you. I'm either gonna do this half-hearted, or I'm gonna find somewhere I'm gonna go. I'm actually where I'm valued, and I'm wanted.
Right.
Yeah, people are your greatest commodity.
Right.
I tell people that all the time. If you know that is your bread and butter, you will win.
But it's sometimes hard for people to follow the fundamentals, the basic things, to understand. Like, people will make you or break you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people don't necessarily leave a company; they leave a boss or a supervisor.
Absolutely.
Right? And if that supervisor, it's kind of like a teacher. Like, I remember my math teacher from high school because she was animated. She made it fun, and I'll never forget. And that was probably one of my best math subjects, geometry. She made it interesting instead of just standing there and being, a lecturer and just writing stuff on the board and figure it out.
Yeah. Right? I just told somebody the other day, people remember how you make them feel.
Yes.
That is critical. And I think, too, that's been part of our success in the short period of time, how we went from no one knowing who we were to just starting to maneuver a little bit here. It is the feeling that we give people when we get the honor and privilege to even talk to them, show up to them, making them feel important. That is critical in the success, right? And I think people miss that. If you invest in people.
Yeah, it's tied to the emotions. And when you have an emotion tied to an event, you're going to remember that. You're going to feel better. You're going to remember those people, that organization. It's, whether it be traumatic or a good event.
Yeah. And then I think, too, that's one thing, even how we're building Combat. This was the first year we had an executive board, which is very small. It's the first year we put an advisory board into place because we wanted to make sure that those that came on board was just not looking for placeholder titles.
Right.
They had to be connected to it. They had to know that this, the importance of it. And as we continue to grow it, we have our application out there right now for advisory. We take that very seriously, who we allow to come on board to the team, because it is a commitment, but it is also it has to be a feeling. Right? It's not a check the block type thing. And that's why a lot of people say, like, how do you guys do that and juggle this and juggle this? Because we relate to it.
Right.
It's not a gimmick for us, right. And we know that people are counting on us to get it right and to keep trying until we get it right. So even when we have these life lessons, I tell people they're not failures. We learn from every aspect of it. And now it's just like, we tried, right? And so I don't let people put us in a box if we didn't hit the mark, because that's perfection and none of us are perfect.
Right.
And I'm like, did we try it? We'll do an after action review. How do we do? So that military keeps showing up.
I love that.
It shows up, but it shows up and it's just like, okay, how do we didn't hit the mark here. What can we do a little bit better here? But then not to hold on to that mistake because then it's tied to your emotions, and then you won't even give yourself permission to do it again or get it right again if you're still tied to that, oh, this was a failure. And I said, most people who say it's that, they're not even doing anything anyway.
Right. I love the fact that you threw in an after action review there. It's 5 easy questions you ask yourself, right? It's lessons learned from a failure.
Yes.
And sometimes you might say, okay, well, it's not a failure because it's a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Right?
And then we could give advice, right? To another person, or when we onboard new advisory people to our board, and they might have these same suggestions. We're like, hey, listen, we tried that. Doesn't mean we're not going to try it again.
Right.
But here's the things that we learned from that. So if you're giving us that same type of thing, let's take this into consideration now. Let's pivot how we can get a little bit better. And I tell people all the time, corrective criticism is great, especially when you got skin in the game, right? You got some skin in the game, and that's what my board, they know that from us, that we want, we know people have busy lives and things of that, but we do a yearly calendar. It's always, it's growing, right? It's an active calendar. It can grow, but trying to let them know these are the things that we have in place. This is what we're going to do, and be intentional about people's time and how we meet, but also show up in the community. So that way, like, they might can't say combat boots to the boardroom, but they might say, hey, I know that combat thing. I know that boots, boot people. And we're like, yeah, they're getting it. They're getting it a little bit at a time. And eventually it'll all come together, but making sure that the right people are connected to this mission as we continue to grow is vital in the success. And in them also not pigeonholing us as the founders to one type of thing. Allowing us to be able to tap into them and their creativity and their knowledge and their abilities to say, what are we missing?
And speaking of creativity, James, can you expand a little bit more on the book? How long did it take you to write this book?
It took me about a year and a half to write it. And that was just one of those things where it was just going through my transition. It's one of those things where I was struggling with my depression is one thing. This is something that actually helped me to cope. So as I was going through and writing this, that's why it took me so long, but it took me like a year and a half to write it.
And where is the book available?
The book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Apple Books.
Okay.
It's available on Audible as well.
Okay. And is it a nonfiction? Is it a fiction?
It's a fiction. It's a thriller. A mystery. The title is 1989 Weapons and the Killer Returns for Revenge. It tells a story of 30 years after the death of a serial killer known as the Penny Murderer. a detective was killed on the night, and the old killer's signature is left a penny in a note, starting with a penny for your thoughts, and it just goes from there. It's one of those things where
sounds pretty interesting. I'm gonna have to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other services that you want to cover within Combat Boots to the Boardroom that you think that veterans would benefit from?
I just want to touch on one thing with our DUI Academy. It's one of those things where it's there to help people who got in trouble. It's also there for people who haven't gotten in trouble. So it's one of the things where you don't have to get in trouble to actually come. If you're struggling with something, you actually want to come and get to necessary to prevent you from going down a dark path, then it's available for you as well.
Okay, so it's not just a preventative, or it's a preventative thing also, not just a solution to you having some issues, like maybe you got a DUI and now, hey, I got to take this class, but hey, I realized that I have this issue and I want to kind of fix it before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, because we also have a partnership with a local church, New Beginning, and they have a great program in place too, where they help if you have like food disorder, if you've had drugs, alcoholism, and you want to get better too. That's where partnerships in the community work better too, and allowing us to help you, hold your hand, walk with you through this program. New Beginnings already has in place too, if you want to volunteer, because I feel like sometimes if you're around like-minded people, you're easier to not make those choices if you already see someone else go through it too. So we'll have volunteer opportunities available to them. If you want to make sure, if you've had a speeding ticket and you want to get your points down on your insurance or things that way before it elevates, like James said, into something like a DUI, because one thing we'll be teaching is like in that preventative side, the cost of what an actual DUI will do to your career, right? So many of us in the military or have worked for federal government, we've had clearances, secret and top secret clearances. What will that do there? I believe in Chatham County, they have it where your pay is deducted 15% if you get a DUI and you are downgraded in your position that you have.
Wow.
So like we're not even yet to begin to talk about the school costs, the actual, your insurance costs, the actual lawyer fees that are associated with it. So we'll have as we evolve this room, it'll have like an artwork kind of up here, like this is what it will cost you. It's a price for everything. So come before it goes that far. So that way then you can see, because we'll have testimonials, people who have been through this, asking them to come back to the class that is to speak after they've been successful, to be able to say, hey, listen, if you're here to do a one-off class because you had a speeding ticket here, don't go the way I went.
Right.
And then that's what we'll have transitioning through combat when they have to give community service. So before you're mandated by court to do it, just come on now. Right. If you know you're struggling with it, sometimes just sit in the back and you might hadn't got caught yet, right? But sometimes it's good to be in the room with someone who's saying, I might have made a mistake, but I'm changing my life. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to put it down before it goes that far. And for us to be able to offer this program, it's a full circle thing too, because we are always critical of how people handle our veterans out there.
Right.
And we want to make sure that this platform, this business, also make sure that they know, like, it's not the end of the world. Everybody's made a mistake. Now let us help educate you and reintegrate you back into society and become productive citizens, and so you can help other people as well.
Yeah. And also with our veterans, most of the time we're reactive instead of being proactive. And that's one of the things we try to be proactive with certain things. We don't want to wait till something happens, then all of a sudden try to help out, because when something happens, it's harder.
Right.
It's harder to actually put the help you need, because now all of a sudden you got to treat the problem. You also got to treat the problem, but also the result of the problem. But if you're proactive, you can actually prevent it from actually happening and getting that bad. So that's one thing where just make sure we're trying to be proactive instead of reactive with certain things.
Now, is there one or two things that you find is difficult for a veteran when they're transitioning from the military to civilian? Pride?
Asking for help.
That was my follow-up question.
Asking for help.
Yeah.
Too. and I'll say both, but because usually if it is the male who may be the sole provider, not showing that weakness component where it's a geared weakness, but that's not weakness, that's strength.
Right.
To be able to ask for help, but especially when the weight is on their shoulders, to still be a provider, right? And still be able to have that same lifestyle that they had, which is why they put a lot of pressure on themselves immediately getting out, which is, I'll say something, I'll be partnering with the Georgia Southern Big Incubator Program. February, going on the base, speaking on a panel to military spouses, and telling them the importance of starting businesses, right? At-home businesses, especially too. Money, we know that money, infidelity, those are ways to divide the family. And if I can talk to that spouse and to let them know you can start an at-home business where you don't have to pay for childcare now. There's some things available for you to do that, or you can, so that way too, when your soldier transitions out, it doesn't have to run directly into the first thing that opportunity give them. They can then be able to be a better person because they can have options if money is off the table. Yeah, so it's always money, pride, those things show up, right? And so we're here to kind of show them we've done it. Right.
And it's also mental as well. That's one of the things too, because oftentimes veterans neglect that mental health aspect, and then once you get out, it only if you have mental struggles before, it's only going to compound it. It's only going to make it worse because now you're dealing with a whole new environment. You're trying to change careers. You're trying to make sure your family's taken care of. Now all of a sudden, it's like, okay, how do I go forward while also dealing with this? And it just makes things worse. So that's one of those big challenges. All make sure you understand that you got to take care of your mental health as well. You can't neglect that, because if so, it's only going to show up later on. It's going to make things worse.
Do you think there's a stigma
absolutely
on it, that getting out of the military, that they don't want to go and ask for help because they're afraid of, like you talked about, security clearance, or it's going to affect their career if they go and talk to somebody and they're going to say, now I'm going to be ostracized, or people are going to say you're weak?
I think part of it too is underestimating how bad it is.
Yeah,
because I think they don't understand that. Okay, you know what? Right now, it's not that bad right now. But now understand that, okay, if you wait till it gets really bad, it's too late. You have to make sure it's one thing you have to take care of when it shows up, because if not, it's only going to get worse. And I think that's one thing people underestimate how bad it actually is.
Right.
And understand the toll is actually going to take out on you, because once you get out, it's one of the things with the stigma. It's still there, but it's not as bad as it was when you're in. But I think people don't understand how bad it is, because it's one thing you don't know. Because as we all know, PTSD, one of the things it's becoming fairly new when it comes to military understanding. Okay, it's impacting how it affects you on a daily basis. So people don't understand that it's one of those things where it's going to be with you for the rest of your life, and it's going to take a toll on you. Understand? Okay, how do I cope with this? And that's one of the things where we try to make sure you understand people. You would like many people to understand. Okay, it's one of those things where you're going to have to deal with it. You can't push it to the side, because if you push it aside, it's not going to get better. It's not one of the things where it's like a cold. It'll get better. No, it's not going to get better. No, you have to take proactive steps to treat it.
I always thought it was something, especially me, have been a budget officer at Fort Stewart Wayne Army Community Hospital, and I've sat in so many meetings with our behavioral health team, and we poured money into programs, and then they still struggle trying to find, because it's not a one-off fits all type of solution to it. But I always think it's something that we really don't even pay attention to it until they get out. It's there while they're in. It's there while they're in, and if we didn't have the stigma so bad, and then the soldiers didn't have the fear of maybe I'm not going to get promoted, or maybe I'm ostracized, and then maybe they'll see it as weakness if I speak up about it, because now maybe you want to then have me on a medical and transition me out when I really just need some help. So like if I broke my arm, you give me a cast while I'm in, and you still let me serve. It's no different, but I'm fear out of speaking up about it, and they wonder like, why is it not? Because it's a stigma, from the leadership. Because and also it's like, well, you want to serve with me if I have to deploy? And you're like, okay, he's crazy, we can't let him go, and things like that. So that's why they don't say anything, out of fear, because then they want to feel normal. And that's the thing, and it's just like there's no normal. Right, that's where we have to start. That stigma is huge, and which is why they have not been able to figure it out, because you want to throw money at it on disability when they get out, because now that's no longer your problem.
Right.
When the problem started in there and it really wasn't addressed. Yeah, you have counselors, you have that. But once I start going there and they start writing up things and they start reporting back to my commanders, if I'm really transparent, like what will the end result be? So I don't say anything because I still need to feed my family. Right. I still want to continue on. I still want to become a leader. But if I say too much, if I tell you I'm suicidal, if I say there's something on the other side of that that's going to interrupt my day-to-day living, so then they hold it and they hold it, and it's like a volcano.
Right. Because then they'd feel even more of a failure if they let their family down, right? Like I went to get help.
Yeah.
And they feel like if now I'm taken out of duty or kicked out of the military or discharged for whatever reason, now I've failed.
Yeah.
Right.
How my family going to eat?
Right.
What if we live on military housing? Where are we going to stay at now?
Right.
What if we don't have family that we can lean on? It's so many. It's like a trickle down thing. And I would sit in these meetings and just sit there and hear these stories. But it would be the frustrating part because they didn't realize it's just like if they are really transparent like you want them to be, there's something that's going to shift, and they might not be ready to handle that shift.
Yeah, and like you said, each person is a little bit different because they could have had trauma or previous things in their younger life, right? And now coming in the military, now that's an added trauma. Amplified. There's a huge change. It amplifies it. It makes it difficult. So you talk to a therapist or somebody, each person's not going to be the same.
No.
Right? And if you want them to be transparent, you really want to get to the root of the problem, you have to not ostracize them or make it a negative thing that if they go and they talk to somebody, right, and they're really transparent about it, it doesn't change their career path to make it more difficult for them.
Yeah, and then it's not always like the therapy, which is why we are adding horse equine assistant therapy inside of Prosper, right? Maybe they'll trust an animal. Right. For a human being, right? And I think that's something that the military needs to get a little bit better about versus like, hey, go to behavioral health, go see a counselor here. What about sending them out there to relate to the horse, because that horse can pick up that temperament and it can start the healing process through serving with that animal, right? We cannot continue to do these one-all fit-all type things. It doesn't work, and that's why the results are not there like they could be. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to partner with this horse academy here, and I'm going to send this active duty person over here.
So you're saying we're not going to do it the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
We're going to change things.
We're going to change.
Right? If you want a better solution,
you have to. You have to be a change agent.
You got to find a route or partner with another organization.
Yeah. And then that's them admitting that their stuff isn't right. So that's not easy to do. Or it's not necessarily not right, but it's just not the end all be all, right?
Right.
There's so many different ways, and that means too they have to realign, which is why us going to the Capitol for Prosper, meeting our House of Representative leaders, our senators, our legislators. This is very important because these are the people, that are writing the bills, writing the laws.
Right.
These are the people when we're talking about NDAAs, we're talking about budgets, we're talking about these are the decision makers, some who've never served one day.
Right.
Never. But they're acting on your behalf when they go into legislative sessions.
Right.
And so, which is why, like, to me, it's heavy for me to play in the community. It's for me to sit on different boards where I have access to these people to let them know this is what we want when we go there, which is why I want people to sign up for Prosper, because I want them to hear directly from the vets. Listen, you push this bill, but what about this? This is what's speaking to us locally, right? And so, shoot, and they say, how can I help you? Our veterans being honest, like, I don't know all the way. Tell me what you have available now, because they weren't able to touch these people most of the time while they were in. And they're so far, I was like, write your congressman. If you want to change, and that's like, yeah, okay, sure. But two, it's just like, no, meet your congressman.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're serving us, and I'm telling you, it's a problem. And I know it might not be overnight, but how do we get after this, maybe realigning funding, right? I always tell people, you follow in the money trail, you see where people's heart is at too, right? And me, from a budget perspective, when you'll hear people say, how could they send money to Ukraine? How can they send money over here to do this, Israel? Understanding the difference with supplemental money, working with our allies, what that matters, but breaking that stuff down so they understand, right? Making sure our soldiers are not on food stamps.
Right.
Right? That's heavy. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That is crazy. That still exists.
Right.
Like that. And so where do we figure that out, right? How do we bridge that gap? And then two, some of our soldiers are some of the best leaders I've ever seen in my life. Put your name in the hat. Let's run.
Right. Change
it from the inside out. And sometimes you have to put yourself out there. It's not really easy to do that, but I believe it's necessary. The more that we have military people in leadership positions in our state as well and in our capital, fighting for us, understanding us, more change will happen. More bipartisanship type bills, legislation being passed too, and not just showing up for photo ops.
Right. So. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, that whole thing will preach a whole session right there. I could preach a whole session because I've seen it. But then I've also seen the ones who really have good hearts.
Right.
Who just need to know, right? And don't come to me when it's just campaign time.
Right.
I want to see you always,
yeah.
Right? I want to see you always. And that's important. I want to make sure that, too, you have our best interests at heart because, too, people love to get on that vet train.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks good for them.
It looks great on paper.
But then is your heart in it?
Is your heart in it?
Right.
I always tell people that heart, that's the main thing right there.
Right.
Because the numbers can lie. You can show up different places just to get the photo off. But where's that heart at? And people can see in the actions.
Yeah.
It happens. And I think, too, that's why people are starting to be like, hey, we don't know a little bit about this comment. Like, what do you do? What do you not do here? And then we were like, we don't just do one thing. Right? And I never want people to put us in a box for I just resume right. No.
Right.
No.
So you're saying somebody could come to you and say, hey, do you do this? And you don't. And you might think, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a need for it?
Yeah. That's how we've grown.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we've evolved into, like, even now I have a partner that I refer resume off to, right? Too, because I'm like, okay, yes, we could do that. But that isn't really the vehicle that we needed to continue to be change agents in our community.
Right.
But there is a need for that. That's just not in our mission set right now. But guess what? I still have somebody here, community partner, who that is what they do. If you're looking directly for that, we can make sure you partner well for that too. And it just continue to build this platform, to use it, to hear, and never forget the voice of the people.
Right. Because
that is what makes you successful. Once you forget to listen to the people, you can just close the doors.
Right.
It doesn't matter anymore. So I think that's combat boots to the boardroom.
Any closing words? Any final things?
I'll just say we're grateful to serve, and then to still serve, right?
Right.
And just to kind of let our veterans and their families know, just because that one chapter closed, you can still serve your community in so many ways.
Right. You served in the military.
Yeah.
And now you're serving the military in the civilian world.
Yeah.
For helping them transition.
Never stops.
Never stops.
Never stops.
So the journey never ends.
Never. Yeah, that's how we do that.